Hey everybody, Backpack Hack here, coming at you with another trail tip. For those of you who own a radio like this is the Grundig Satallit 750. I just got it a couple weeks ago and I came up with an unusual way to get power to this. So stick around for you preppers out there, you might be interested in this. There's two ways basically to power this radio. One is through the battery compartment in the back, which will take 4 D cells, and you can either put in regular alkalines, or you can put in rechargeables, or you can use the wall wart that comes with it. Now, this radio has been out of production, I think, for almost 4 years now, but you can still buy them on eBay, mostly used. To find a new one, you might have to wait a while. There's a couple of redheaded stepchildren to this radio. One is the Eton Executive 750, but I think that one has just been recently discontinued, so I don't know if you can still buy one of those, but it's essentially the same radio. But if you want to buy a new one, a version of this is available in the form of a Tecsun S-2000, and I'll put a link to their website down below. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever. I'm not making a dime off of anything they sell. But if you want one of these new, they are available, but just not under the Grundig name. But there's basically two ways to power one of these. The battery port in the back and an AC adapter. The problem with the power supplies on this is twofold, and if you've been researching these radios, or if you even own one, you'll know about this, and that is there's two things about the wall wart power supplies that is kind of unusual. First off, they're 6 volts. Now that in itself isn't unusual, but what is unusual is the coaxial connection that plugs into the side is center negative. Now, there is no international standard on how to put the polarity to these, but usually it's center positive. This particular radio and the Grundig, or the Eton and the Tecsun, they're all center negative. So you just don't go down to Walmart and buy a cord that's a wall wart that is 6 volt DC center negative. Now, you can get on eBay and you can get on Amazon and buy them all day long. But I'm not going to suggest that, because more than likely those wall warts either put out radiation and it's going to interfere with your reception. You're going to get a lot of static that this puts out. It's either that or the conversion process from 120 volts or your 240 volts, whatever country you're in, down to that 6 volt DC is so cheap that there's an AC hum introduced into that low voltage side. So no matter what you do, no matter what band, anything you're doing on the radio, you're going to get this constant hum. So I would suggest that you just don't go buy a wall wart that just is made for this off of Amazon or eBay, because you're probably not going to be satisfied with it. But there was one aspect that really threw me for a loop on this. This runs off of 5 volts, and I know this because there is a setting on here that you can tell the radio whether you have 1.5 volt alkaline batteries or 1.25 volt rechargeable batteries. Now there's 3 options I have right here of putting batteries in this. I can put alkalines in, I can put rechargeable D cells, or I can take AA batteries and put them in these adapters and run them off of there. So right here I would have 4 different ways to power this up. But my thinking was like this. If this is 6 volts and the power supply is 6 volts and it works, but these are 5 volts, why not run it off of 5 volts? And what got me thinking about this was this power supply. This is the one that came with this radio. And what's unusual about this one is it's 5 volts. Now, I've been spinning around on this planet for the better part of 6 decades. And this is the first time I've ever seen a 5 volt wall wart. I've seen a lot of other odd voltages, but this is the first 5 volt wall wart I've seen in my life. Now, some of you are probably thinking, why is he trying to put 5 volts into here? If these things are so hard to find, why bother trying to find a 5 volt when you can find a 6 volt? Others are probably thinking, I know where he's going with this. Because I can tell you, if you put 5 volts into this, like this did, it'll work. So why not just run it off of 5 volts DC? Because you're probably thinking, well, if these wall warts are so hard to find, why? Where are you going to find 5 volt DC power? Well, I can guarantee you, if you are watching this video, you have access to 5 volts DC. I don't care if you're watching this on a computer, a desktop. I don't care if you're looking at it on a laptop. I don't care if you're looking at it on a tablet. I don't care if you're watching this video on your phone. You have access to a 5 volt power supply. And where is it going to come from? A USB port. In case you didn't know about it, these things have a voltage to them. And they put out 5 volts DC, just like this. So, is it possible that this will drive this? Well, this works off of 5 volts, and these put out 5 volts, but I needed 2 more pieces of information to make sure that I wasn't going to have any problem. One is, how much current does this thing use, as opposed to how much current one of these is capable of producing, because I don't want to overload one of these trying to drive this, because I might damage it. The last thing I want to do is damage my expensive electronics. I need 2 things. I need to know how much one of these puts out, and I need to know how much this uses. Well, a quick internet search brought me to the conclusion that in order for this USB port, which is certified, to be able to be certified, has to put out and maintain 500 milliamps, which is half of an amp. Now, most of them put out 1, and there's even some that put out 2 and 3 now. 3 amps. So that's more than enough to drive this radio. And how do I know that? I looked in the instruction manual, and right in the instruction manual it says that without the backlight, it uses 80 milliamps, and with the backlight, it uses 90. Less than 1/10 of an amp that this uses, and this puts out a half. So in theory, you should be able to drive this radio off of a USB port, correct? So all I had to do is find a cord. I can't find one. And the problem is because this is center negative. There's no international standard that says the center has to be positive, although that's the most common. But this particular radio, the center is negative. And while the internet, I can get on Amazon and eBay as well, instead of finding one of these, I can find a cord that would do it, but they're all center positive. And that would keep the radio from working. So I decided to make my own cord. I remembered I had an old USB cord shoved in a drawer where the end that plugged into my phone, and I don't have that phone anymore, the end that plugged into it had broken off. But the cord and the USB-A connector that plugged into here were perfectly good. So I drug it out, and I took one of these, and I made my own cord. So we're going to fire this up, and this is the hat trick. You can see that there's nothing plugged in, there's no batteries in it, and I'm going to plug this in, and I'm going to show you that this will work off of a USB port. Now, I'm not going to play these songs very long because it's daytime and shortwave just isn't going to come in. I'm going to use FM stations, and I'm just going to hit the button and kind of cycle through some real quick to show you that this works, and I'm going to do it real quick so I don't get a DMCA or DCMA violation just for having some music. So I'm going to turn the volume up, and let's listen to some local FM stations.
To get their PPP loans.
It is time for Saturday.
And then we
Yeah, some of them were weaker stations and they were getting kind of staticky. But that just goes to show you that it is possible to drive the Grundig Satallit 750 as well as probably the Eton 750 and the Tecsun S-2000. Watch the display there. It should have gone off. I can't tell if it did or not, but it'll eventually will. Now, there's a couple of things I want to warn you about on this. First off, when you're driving it off of something like this, you're probably going to get a low battery indication. Don't worry about it. As long as the radio functions, that's all that matters. The other thing is if you're going to build a cord like this, make sure you use a charger-only cord. Now, the USB cord that comes with like external hard drives, there's 4 wires in here, 2 for power and 2 for data. And if you use one of those 4-wire cords, you have to cut off the data lines to work with this. And you've got those 2 ends of the data lines in there just floating around. Unless you want to treat them, they may short out or may come in contact with a power supply. So who knows what that would do to your electronics inside your laptop or a charger like this. Well, this wouldn't have it, but your laptop or your desktop, who knows what would happen. So make sure you get a charger cord. Cut the end off, and if there's only 2 wires, you're golden. Just make sure the negative is to the center pin. So other than that, those 2 little items that the battery indicator is low is to make sure you use a 2-wire cord as opposed to a 4 so you don't run into problems frying your electronics. It is possible to run any of these 3 radios off of a USB port. So this is Backpack Hack coming at you with this trail tip. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment on my videos. Be safe out there, and I'll see you out on the trail.